Oh, and here's Beth Burgess, Paul.
Great. Good morning, everyone. My name is Paul Butkus. I'm the Vice Chair of the Connecticut Historic Preservation Council. I'm calling to order our August 23rd, 2023 meeting. Attending this morning are the following council members: Beth Burgess, myself, Paul Butkus, Marguerite Carnell, Thomas Elmore, Leah Glazer, Sarah Nelson, and Deanna Rhodes. Quorum is therefore present.
Paul, sorry to interrupt again,
Yep.
Jonathan. V just jumped in as soon as you were taking attendance, so she's here as well.
And Vincenza Ducey is also here.
Hi.
The following is the Historic Preservation Council's format and review of public comment procedures. Given the online format of today's meeting, and for those who are visitors today want to review and explain our procedures. The order of presentation: I'll read each motion and ask for the motion to be moved and seconded. Staff will present the agenda item to the council, and council members will have an opportunity to ask questions. If called upon by staff, a representative of the organization may offer statements or address the council's questions. For members of the public who wish to speak to the agenda item, we ask that you identify yourself and your affiliation. After all questions have been addressed and statements made, a roll call vote will be taken. If members of the public have letters and/or written statements that they wish to submit to the record, please email them to Jonathan Kinney. The email address is jonathan.kinney@ct.gov. The Historic Preservation Council takes statements from the members of the public but does not respond to questions. Lastly, please only address the particular agenda item being addressed at that time. The following is the Historic Preservation Council's policy regarding conflict of interest. The Historic Preservation Council votes on matters which provide leadership, service, and economic benefits to property owners, consultants, local governments, and not-for-profit organizations. Given this responsibility and to maintain the highest professional standards in the discharge of our duties, it's important to maintain a strong code of ethics for all council members and department employees. In order to avoid possible violations of the Department of Economic and Community Development ethics standards, it's necessary for the council to be aware of any situations in which there's a real, potential, or apparent conflict of interest involving anyone here. A conflict of interest may occur when a public official's participation in agency matters results in a personal financial gain. All council and staff have been provided with a copy of the Department of Economic and Community Development ethics statements and governing statutes. Having reviewed them and today's agenda, members of the council and staff are now asked to disclose any affiliations with entities or projects that may create a conflict of interest as defined by agency policy and pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes I-79 through I-89, entitled Code of Ethics for Public Officials. Once disclosed, the member or staff may recuse themselves from that particular agenda item. Having read the statement, are there any council or staff members that would like to disclose a conflict of interest to any of the items in today's agenda?
Yes, Deanna Rhodes. I would like to recuse myself from application 5B6 related to the City of Norwich. I work for the City of Norwich.
Thank you. Anyone else? Recused members are asked to leave the meeting platform, and staff will send a text message to when they may return to the meeting. Please make sure that staff has your cell number so they can get in touch with you. Thank you. Item 4A, the review and approval of meeting minutes from the last meeting, July 12th, 2023. The meeting minutes were provided to council members via email and in the shared folder. And I believe Marguerite had some grammatical corrections. Are there any other corrections, Jonathan?
Marguerite's were the only ones I received.
Sarah?
Paula, this is just a technical item. I was present just for one agenda item to maintain a quorum, and then I left the meeting, so that may want to be noted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I think we picked that up, but I'll just double check.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve the minutes with the revisions as noted?
Marguerite,
Anyone?
so moved.
And a second?
Beth Burgess.
Okay. So roll call vote. V.
Aye. Aye.
Beth Burgess.
Aye.
I will abstain. Marguerite.
Aye.
Tom Elmore.
Aye.
Leah Glazer.
Abstain. I wasn't here. I wasn't there.
Okay. And Sarah Nelson.
I will abstain too.
Okay. And Deanna, you were not present.
I was there, but I was not seated yet, so I would say I abstain.
Okay. So Sarah, does the motion pass with the handful of ayes? Which is the number of abstentions?
People voted, so
Okay. Thank you. The motion carries. Okay. Now moving on to the fun stuff. Let me turn my page. Item 5B1. The Historic Preservation Council votes to award an institutional support for capacity building grant, formerly the Basic Operational Support Grant, to the below listed applicant in the amount shown below. The grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. The applicant is New Haven Preservation Trust. The project 2-year funding under the Institutional Support for Capacity Building Grant in the amount of $100,000. Could I have a motion to approve?
this is Sarah, so moved.
And a second?
V, I second.
Thank you. Discussion?
Okay. Good morning, everybody. This is Mary. Staff recommends approval of this application. I think for council members that may not have been here 2 years ago, the Institutional Support for Capacity Building Grant is given to local nonprofits whose primary mission is the broad-based identification and advocacy to protect historic resources. And so we currently have 3 active applicants, 2 of which are on the agenda today. We do value this partnership because it really helps keep SHPO abreast of critical issues at the local level so that we can jump in if needed in a timely manner. And also it's just nice to be able to help these organizations with this mission because it reflects our mission as well. So if anybody has any questions about the grant itself, the program itself, or this particular application, I would be happy to answer them. And also, I think Susan Godshall is here with the New Haven Preservation Trust. So there you go.
Thank you, Mary. Any questions? Trying to see if anybody's hands are raised. No, I have one question, probably for Susan. I noticed that one of the goals under the DEI is adding additional listings on the state and national register and reaching out to underserved communities. And since one of the most direct programs that is available to homeowners is the Historic Home Rehabilitation Tax Credit, I did see that there were opportunities for sponsoring programs for SHPO to come down to make people aware of the program. But I was wondering if the trust would be willing to actually assist some applicants through the process. Sometimes it's not a heavy lift, but it would be a great way of assisting people that otherwise might not have the wherewithal to hire a professional or just get through the paperwork. Sometimes any paperwork can be daunting, but it seems like that would be a great outreach, especially to communities that can really benefit from some of these programs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Susan Godshall. I am on the board of the New Haven Preservation Trust. I'm accompanied today by Sarah Tisdale, who is our preservationist. Yes, of course, we would like to increase the number of people throughout the city using that program. And Sarah is ready, willing, and able to assist with the complications of bureaucracy or contracting. We had a history of having 2 or 3 tax credit workshops a year pre-COVID. And since then, there's been some turnover in the SHPO staff, and then, of course, the pandemic. But we would happily resume that schedule and help the applicants in their follow-up.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I don't see any hands raised. With that, we'll take a roll call vote. V.
Aye.
Beth Burgess.
Aye.
I guess I will abstain. Marguerite Cornell.
Aye.
Tom Elmore.
I'll abstain.
Leah Glazer.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Sarah Nelson
Aye.
and Deanna Rhodes.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Moving on, item 5B2. The Historic Preservation Council votes to award an institutional support for capacity building grant, formerly the Basic Operating Support Grant, to the below listed applicant in the amount shown below. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Applicant New London Landmarks, project 2-year funding under the Institutional Support for Capacity Building Grant in the amount of $100,000. Can I have a motion to approve?
This is Sarah, so moved.
Thank you. And a
Marguerite,
second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion?
Great. Okay. And again, this is the second of our 3 active grantees under this program. New London Landmarks they're doing a fabulous job. We do check in with our ISCB grantees on a quarterly basis just to see how everything's going. So it's a very active partnership. And so staff does recommend approval of this application as well. And Laura Natush is here from New London Landmarks to answer any questions that I cannot.
Any questions from the council members? Sarah Nelson.
It's not a question, but I just wanted to say, having read a couple of these applications, that I just wanted to commend Laura for this application. I found it very well edited and focused, and it was a pleasure to read.
Thank you.
Sarah, thank you. I second that comment. It was an amazing application. I also was really just grateful to see the DEAI work included in this application, and it's so meaningful to the community and work within the preservation field at the moment. So thank you so much for that.
Sarah, do you still have your hand up? Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to a roll call vote. V.
Aye.
Beth Burgess.
Aye.
I'll abstain. Marguerite Cornell.
Aye.
Tom Elmore.
I'll abstain.
Leah Glazer.
Aye.
Sarah Nelson.
Aye.
And Deanna Rhodes. Deanna, oh, thank you. It takes a while to get used to these on and offs. The motion carries. Thank you very much, and we wish you well.
Thank you.
Okay, moving right along. Agenda item 5B3. The Historic Preservation Council votes to recommend the award of a survey and planning grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Applicant is the East Woodstock Congregational Church, and the project consulting services of a consultant who meets the Secretary of Interior's professional qualification standards for conservation to prepare a paint analysis of interior portions of the East Woodstock Congregational Church built in 1834 at 220 Woodstock Road in Woodstock. The amount is $2,308. Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved, Tom.
And a second?
Second, Leah.
Discussion?
Great. So staff recommends approval of this application. It's a small amount they're asking for. Because as you read in the application, they're actually having an historic structures report done pro bono by a very qualified historic preservation consultant, architectural historian. However, they do need the paint analysis part just to learn more about the original finishes, and that budget is about $5,000. So they're asking for half of that. They're not using the other several $1,000s that the HSR would normally cost, because we unfortunately don't accept in-kind matches, only dollar for dollar. So it's a small grant, but we highly recommend it. And so, and I think Dawn Adeletta is here to answer any questions that I can't.
Sarah Nelson?
Thank you, Paul. So the questions, Mary, it's a very worthy application. I'm in support of it. But I just want to clarify that paint analysis budgets are based on the number of locations that are being done, the number of layers that are being done. And this budget to me seemed low based on some prior proposals that we've had on other projects. And I just wanted to ask you how this number was arrived at, because I didn't see that in the application.
I think I'm hoping Dawn can be more definitive, but I believe it was arrived at in consultation with Myron Statue, who's the preservation consultant that's doing the historic structures report. But I know that Dawn and I did have some lengthy phone conversations about what the costs might be. But Dawn, I think she's here.
I'm not
is
sure
there
you
more
can
to it?
hear me.
Yes.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay, fine. Yes, this is Dawn Adeletta, and I'm the contact person for the East Woodstock Congregational Church. And yes, we worked closely with Myron. He knew from his extended past jobs like this exactly how many samples he would need. And if you've worked with him before, he's extremely fussy about where they're taken and the depth at which they're taken. So based on how many samples he felt he would need to have, we went online and we did a lot of research as to how much it would cost to have that number of samples done to the level of analysis that Myron insisted on. So that's why we came up with that number, which I thought was low too, but he was confident that we could find competent people that would do that. And we didn't want to ask for money that we wouldn't use.
So I guess, Mary, my only concern is that these days that things may cost more.
No, you're absolutely right. I am getting a lot of, not a lot, but I'm getting feedback from other types of consultants that, we may need to continue to stress to our applicants that our grants are only going to be able to cover a portion of things. Now, having said that, this is only $2,500. So if they, once they go through the bidding, it's not ideal, but applicants do always have the option of coming back and asking for an increased amount based on the types of proposals they're getting in response to an RFP up to the original cap. So they've got a long way to go. So I guess, I'll be working with Dawn on the RFP process, and if it looks like, things are in pace with, other post-COVID cost escalations, we can help them as necessary.
Thank you. And any further comments or questions? Okay. In that case, we'll take, oh, yes, Marguerite.
I'd had just a comment that I would encourage the applicant perhaps to apply for a later grant to undertake a long-term preservation plan for the building, because I did not see one in the application.
Eastwood, that's a great idea. If needed, I know that East Woodstock Congregational is an HRF recipient, and so they probably submitted a long-term preservation plan with that application. But in the future, when I notice that, I'll put 2 and 2 together and then try to pull that plan from the HRF grant, and include that with applications if we have, another applicant like that. So, but yeah, always a good point.
That's good.
Yeah, thank you for that. And we'll put it on the discussion because we're planning using this as a springboard for future grants for the actual work. And we'll include the need for a long-term preservation plan in case you don't already have one on file, Mary.
Thank you. All right, we'll move to the vote. V.
Aye.
Beth Burgess.
Aye.
I will abstain. Marguerite Carnell.
Aye.
Tom Elmore.
Aye.
Leah Glazer.
Aye.
Sarah Nelson.
Aye.
And Deanna Rhodes.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item is item 5B4. The Historic Preservation Council votes to recommend the award of a survey and planning grant funded by the Community Investment Act to the State of Connecticut to the below-listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below-listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application. The New England Hebrew Farmers of the Emmanuel Society, and the project is consulting services of a CFR qualified engineer to complete plans and specs for the stabilization via cribbing of the remains of the NEH FES Creamery building from 1892 at 600 Route 161 in Montville, in the amount of $15,000. Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Beth Burgess.
And a second?
I'll second.
Marguerite, second. Oh, sorry, Tom.
That's all right.
Who wants it? Marguerite?
Aye.
You pick,
Okay.
Paul.
All right, Marguerite. Discussion.
Staff recommends approval of this application. This site has been the recipient of previous grants from our office. And thanks to the tireless efforts of Nancy Savin, she continues to persevere in various areas on the site. Oops, I'm losing my battery. Yikes. And so this is another project that she would like to see undertaken for the stabilization. It is a site of remains, I guess. I don't know the technical word. And so we want to stabilize as much as possible so that we can continue to educate the public about the site itself. Nancy Savin is here, as well as Stacy Vero, who I believe helped with the application, to answer any questions that I can't.
Any questions or comments from council members?
Paul, I got a comment and a question.
Sure.
On page 12, the timeline should be updated. It appears that this was pulled from previous meetings because of maybe number of applications. I don't know. But the question that I have is the $15,000 sufficient to cover this project? Because on page 12 for the budget narrative, it says costs assumed to create the plans and specs. And just throw that out. I want to make sure they have enough.
Right.
I support this totally, but I want to make sure there's enough.
Yeah, and we did discuss that it is based on, I don't know if Nancy consulted with the engineer that has done previous work. The previous assessment though is several years old. So you're correct. It might be more, but I see Nancy shaking her head, and I'd be happy to to hear what she has to say. And I just need to plug in my computer. I'll be right back.
Nancy, do you want to?
Am I
Respond to
unmuted
that?
now? No?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
You're good. Okay. First of all, thank you to everyone for reviewing this application. Certainly thank you to Stacy Vero for preparing it with me, mostly her though. And of course, thank you to SHPO, because it's absolutely true, as Mary indicated, that this historic site, which is a state archaeological site, and it's on the National Register, and it's hopefully going to be a national archaeological site in the near future, has received grants, matching grants, in the preparation for the foundation rehab for the synagogue, which burned down in 1975, but it was built in 1892, for the mikveh. And now I am turning, yes, our organization, turning our attention to the creamery building, which I'd hoped to be able to share a picture, but I think all of the members of the council have seen the picture of the creamery. All that remains are the 4 foundation walls, 2 freestanding, 2 embedded. And this application is not, to answer your question, sir, can't remember your name exactly. It is not for the implementation of the cribbing for these walls. It is for engineering specs, so that we know how it's to be done, the methodology, and how much it will cost. With these in hand, then we will take the next step to try to implement it. So you're right. I had not approached a cribbing company, which Catherine Labadia has given me the name of, some company in New Haven who has done previous work with SHPO, who is reputable and very exacting in this art of wooden cribbing. So that's what that is. We feel, and Stacy determined that this was an appropriate sum to obtain these highly necessary, right, drawings, engineering specs, and then we would proceed the next step, which may or may not involve SHPO, and that is the implementation. And also, to the kind gentleman who spoke before, you're absolutely right. The dates at the end of the application need to be adjusted because, as you know, the meetings, I don't know, were either suspended for a little while or whatever. But those are the 2 items that I hope I answered your questions.
Yeah, no, Mary, that's fine. I wasn't, or Nancy, sorry. I wasn't inquiring about the cribbing. It was with regard to the plans and specs. Question for Sarah Nelson. Sarah, should this kind of work also include foundation assessment and drawings at the same time? Because if we just do plans and specs on a wobbly top wall and don't include the connection to the foundation, we might be missing something.
I assume, and Nancy, you can probably clarify. So you've been working with a team for a while, and I assume that there has been some preliminary work done to map the foundation, to draw it.
Yes. All right. May I answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
In 2012, which is a long time ago, Cirrus Structural Engineering did a complete assessment of all of the stone remains, or ruins, shall we say, on the archaeological site. And at that point in time, it was totally mapped and diagrammed, and her recommendation was for helical soil anchors for just the two embedded walls, we did not go ahead with that particular plan. But yes, you're right. This is with a HIP tag grant from Connecticut Preservation, or at that point, the Connecticut Trust for Historic Preservation. And so those drawings exist. This is for the additional step now of all four walls being cribbed to protect them. So is that specific enough to answer the question?
That sounds
about
great.
whether-
Yes.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Sarah, are you still puzzled?
No, I'm just listening, and I see that Stacy raised her hand.
Okay.
No, I took it back down. I guess just the shorthand version is just, we have something to build off of. So we assumed that would be a good foundation in order to provide the next consultants with the mapped foundations and all of that. So.
And I guess I'll just ask if the ultimate plan is to work physically on the walls themselves so the cribbing can be removed in the future, so it's not kind of impacting the appreciation of the structures.
What
Is
did
this
you just say?
is the cribbing a temporary solution until an ultimate restoration of the walls so they can be freestanding, and is that the long-term plan?
That is an excellent question. I will only say that Catherine Lavadia has assured me that the cribbing that you call temporary will last, at least in her experience, for maybe 20, 25 years. So I really can't say whether in the future, and by that time, this probably will belong to the Archaeological Conservancy of America, if they so determine to somehow rehab them in a different way, let's hope it happens. But at this point, I can't project that far.
So this is Kathy. I'll add a little bit to that. So there's multiple layers to be concerned with this property. Right now, the area of the property that we're talking about, which is the historic property, is not under ownership of either Nefesh or the Archaeological Conservancy. It is actually within a DOT purchased property. The goal, however, Nefesh has a very strong easement to the property and repair rights and everything else. The goal, however, though, was that this property would be released and that Nefesh or the Archaeological Conservancy would be able to have the first right of refusal in purchasing it. But in the meantime, the reason why DOT had purchased it was part of their Route 11 corridor creation. Now that project is dead, but they are going to be doing activities along the main road there, which I think is Route 85. And our concern with this particular foundation is that as heavy equipment is moving through, as there's a lot of construction, we want to stabilize it through this period when DOT still owns the property, so that at some point when it reverts back to a preservation organization, that they will have something that they can work with. And yes, the goal in the future is to create a place. I mean, I think this is Nancy's vision in the future, is to create a place that's interpretive, that people can visit, that is more welcoming than it currently is. But until DOT finishes the projects they need to, we just want to make sure it's still standing.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions?
Thanks, Paul. I do have
Yes.
one. I don't think Mary's back yet, but I was curious about the lack of a long-range preservation plan with this, which is required for pre-development studies. And I would understand, oh, there's Mary. I would understand that because this is an assessment and you're building plans and specifications, that you would hope that LRPP would be an outcome of that, I imagine. But I just wonder how we would keep this equitable moving forward with other applications and requirement.
The long-term preservation plan is on the application checklist. It is absolutely required for our HRF grant application.
Right.
And we did fund a condition assessment, a general condition assessment, in 2018, a couple of years ago. And because this is kind of a complicated, not complicated, but kind of complex parcel with different ownerships and different pieces and different, it is hard for, we do need to, we did that overall plan, but you're correct. We should encourage, as we always do, the step back and the more holistic approach. But to answer the concern, the long range preservation plan isn't an absolute requirement for pre-development as it is for HRF.
Okay.
So I will just add on to that. Nancy does have a full long-term vision for the property and a landscaping plan that's been designed by a landscape architect. But because of the ownerships, those are the goals for the future. Right now, there is extremely, probably one of the best preservation plans I've seen for the Archaeology Conservancy owned portion of the parcel. Once this additional parcel is added to that, it will fall under that long-term management plan.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And as we, as they move forward with additional grants, which I know they will, we will be sure to gather up all of the previous pre-development documentation we have and put them in with applications so that, there's no concerns or questions in that regard.
Thank you.
Just one last comment, Mary. Just could you clarify when survey and planning grants require a match or don't require a match?
This one falls under plans and specifications, and so we did institute, I think actually a year ago, a non-matching grant for plans and specifications, which applies to this type of property as well, in addition to above ground or other types of resources. We did have to lower the cap, though, in light of the fact that we are granting funds as we get them in the CIA. So while it's still non-matching, the cap is now at 20 rather than the larger amount that we used to allow.
Thank you. All right. If there are no more questions, we can move to the roll call vote. Vincenzo?
Sorry, I was unmuted. Aye.
Thank you. Thank you. Beth Burgess?
Aye.
I will abstain. Marguerite Cornell?
Aye.
Tom Elmore?
Aye.
Leah Glazer?
Aye.
Sarah Nelson?
Aye.
And Deanna Rhodes?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving right along. Item 5B5. Historic Preservation Council votes to recommend the award of a survey and planning grant funded by the Community Investment Act to the state of Connecticut to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant that is administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Applicant, United Methodist Church of Hartford, and the project consulting services of a CFR qualified architect or engineer team to prepare stormwater management systems and assessment and selected hazardous materials testing for the United Methodist Church of Hartford, built in 1904 at 571 Farmington Avenue in Hartford. Grant amount $17,000. I have a motion to approve.
This is Sarah, so moved.
And a second.
I'll second. Tom?
Thank you. Discussion?
Great. So staff does recommend approval of this application. Mike Farino, one of our partner circuit riders, and I have made several site visits to this property. They have really been struggling for a variety of reasons, which are kind of outlined in the application with water infiltration. So at first, I think they contacted us for a general condition assessment, but right now the water infiltration is a huge issue, preventing them from providing services and also just assistance to the community for, on a variety of levels. The budget was arrived at in consultation with Mike Farino and their technical assistance consultancy. So the 12,000 is for the water management assessment. And then they also, because as they stated in the application, there's obviously hazardous material in there. They added more for that testing, which may or may not be enough. So I would appreciate your input on that. But we do recommend approval of this application. It's an important resource, and it's an important service to the community. And Mary Cockram is here with the church, and who also, I believe, wrote the application.
And so Mary, just following on my previous comment, they're asking for 17,000 as a non-match, and they had their reasons for asking for that. But if the program is up to the 20,000, we don't have to consider their other contributions for their water damage that happened previously.
And that again, they are asking for the match waiver, which is allowed under our policy if the circumstances are compelling, which I thought they were. So I encourage them to do that. However, they're not exactly matching all of the funding they've spent
Right.
previous. It's just that because they've spent all that money, they don't have any left. I mean, they don't have a whole lot left for this project, which is so important. So that is why we encourage them to apply for the match waiver, and I really hope that you will consider that and approve that. So, because that funding was spent previous to the application, so they can't really use
Right.
it as a match.
Any comments or questions from the council? Sarah
What are
Nelson?
Thank you, Paul. So I am always delighted to see somebody digging down into water infiltration issues, which is the bane of any building. The perspective that I would share is that as you're working with your engineering team, I think you're probably going to want to get a geotechnical engineer as well as a civil engineer working on the drainage aspects, because there's sort of a bifurcation as to who does what, and the geotechnical engineer will be looking at things like the water flow through the neighborhood, and that's going to be an important part of the puzzle too, because it's not always the downspouts that are adjacent to the building. So as you're putting your RFP together, I would just encourage you to use language to make sure that you get that. And then married to the budget, a geotechnical engineer may actually request some soil borings, and that would actually raise the budget.
Okay. And as always, as they move through that process, again, it's not optimal, but they do have the option. I mean, they haven't met the cap yet, so they could come back for additional funding if need be.
V, you have a question?
No, I do. When I looked at the pictures, are there any environmental testing being done? Because with water filtration over time, you develop whether it's mold or any type of additional hazard caused for environmental.
They and maybe Mary can elaborate on this, but they are asking for that extra 5,000, which may or may not be enough. The primary focus is the asbestos tile that's on the floor as they work. But obviously, because water infiltration is the primary issue, they are facing some mold issues as well, which definitely should not be ignored, during this process while they have a team in there.
I do agree with getting the additional geo civil, even maybe structural, because now you have some damages, looking at one of the pictures on the siding of the basement. So it is extensive. So I think just want to make sure that you have enough to cover for the testing that you're doing. That's my only comment.
Thank you. Tom, you have a question?
I do. First question to Mary Dunn, based on V and Sarah's discussion. If additional consultants are brought in and if soil borings are needed and the consultants' fees go above the $12,000, Mary, would it be prudent to separate the soil water issue from the asbestos issue into two different grants for them and to focus on the water first? I know asbestos is a big deal, but they can't obviously repair the inside until the outside gets fixed.
Right. No, yes, definitely. And that is sort of how they created the budget. They did separate out the actual assessment versus the hazmat. And again, I think and so we can put that in the RFP. We can parse that out. And also, if it turns out that that this is just a bigger, although we're kind of confident because we did work with with Preservation Connecticut and their technical team. If it does turn out to just be a lot bigger, we can regroup and phase this. You know, maybe they need to spend all 17 or ask for more on one part and then come back, you know, for an additional grant. We just need to kind of work through this process and see what that scope is looking like as we move forward.
No, that sounds great. My second question for Mary Cochran. Mary, can you give us some background information on what you allude to from the MDC and what you perceive their work to have done to cause the change of water flow?
They were working on the main that's on South Whitney Street, and suddenly the pipe broke somewhere. The pipe outside the building broke, and we had a couple feet of water in the building. And they said that they were not responsible. It was completely coincidental that it just happened while they were working outside the building. So that was a $30,000 unbudgeted expense that kind of set us back, honestly.
Oh, sure. Well, it's unfortunate that, well, I won't say that. Anyway, I support the application and I wish you the best of luck with it. I think
Yes, sir.
Duly needed.
Yeah. As you mentioned, Tom, it seemed odd from the description that when they turned off the main at the street, it stopped leaking into the building. So trying to figure out
get returned.
where the break happened, if it was on their water main into the building, you know, beyond it seems a little bit unclear as to what the cause, but hopefully they'll get to the bottom of it here.
I deposited it on Friday. I'll see what happens. I'll check with my bank.
We have somebody, I believe, as a guest, if they could mute their.
Yeah, I just muted him.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further questions? Hearing none, I guess we can move to our roll call vote. V.
Aye.
Beth Burgess.
Aye.
I will abstain. Marguerite Carnell.
Aye.
Tom Elmore.
Aye.
Leah Glazer.
Aye.
Sarah Nelson.
Aye.
And Deanna Rhodes.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next item on the schedule is VB6, and I believe, Deanna, you're recusing yourself from this item. The Historic Preservation Council votes to award a certified local government historic preservation enhancement grant funded by the Historic Preservation Fund of the Department of the Interior National Park Service to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All federal and state grant guidelines and requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. The applicant is the City of Norwich. The project is consulting services of a CFR qualified architect and engineer team to prepare a conditions assessment report for the Dr. Patrick Cassidy House, circa 1890, located at 98 Washington Street, Norwich, and the amount of $20,000. Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved, Beth Burgess.
And a second?
Second, Sarah Nelson.
Thank you. Discussion.
Hi, everybody. I turned my camera off because I think I've got some unstable everything going on here, electricity and internet. But staff does recommend approval of this application. We're really happy that the city, as a certified local government, is really taking an interest in good stewardship of this important property. And as noted in the application, their first RFP for development of this property was unsuccessful. And so we were hoping, SHPO offered the opportunity to apply for this grant to investigate more into what issues are so that potential buyers and developers would be able to make educated decisions based on whether they want to purchase the property and undertake development. So with that, we do recommend approval. Pat McLaughlin from the city is here, to answer any questions that I can't.
Thank you, Mary. Would anybody like to start? I have a few questions, but anyone else first? Okay, I'll take it on. Again, Mary, with these conditions assessments, not knowing what the ultimate use is going to be, it makes it very difficult to put together cost estimates that they're talking about in there. And there were diagrammatic plans of the house, which would be sufficient for a conditions assessment rather than going, for full plans and specs. So if the goal is to kind of know what the conditions are currently to help an informed decision by the city's part of how to go forward, it's difficult to go through and put together and say it's going to be $1 million to put this thing together and then put that out to a developer and say, well, here's what we want, versus
right. Yeah, definitely. And we have encouraged in concert with this, the town maybe engaging other stakeholders to just feel out what the city might want for the use of the house. But for this, the purpose of this grant is to sort of give any potential buyers and developers just to let them know does it need a new roof? Are there, are there HVAC problems? Is there water infiltration? It kind of just a cursory, not really an RFP for a specific use, more just to provide more information in the RFP about the condition of the house. But having said that, obviously it's always good to either know what you want or at least engage stakeholders to explore possible options, because it is a pretty sizable house, and I don't believe that residential is the primary goal, but I'm not sure. Pat, I don't know if you have any insight on that.
Residential could be a goal. It would be a mixed use would probably be the optimum goal, with possibly some offices and apartments. It could be a B&B. It's about 4,800 square feet. It's a large house. And the idea with the condition assessment is to kind of prioritize and put cost estimates on what the repairs that are necessary to basically make the structure occupiable, seal it up from a weather standpoint, and not necessarily maybe renovate a lot of the wall interior spaces at the moment, but because we don't know the uses, but probably there wouldn't be many changes to the main walls and on the interior of the house anyway, because it's all, you know, stick frame. So it's basically to identify priorities for making the structure habitable and to quantify the costs associated with those.
Sarah, you want to jump in?
Thank you, Paul. And this is really just tagging on to what you're saying, and you know, Pat, what the architects are thinking about is that the floor structure design, for example, is going to be different if it's potentially a mixed use or if it's going to be a B&B. And so as we're sort of thinking ahead for you about budgeting and about your future potential owners of the property, that there's a portion of this study that has to sort of acknowledge feasibility and plan changes required for these different uses. Things like second means of egress, and if it needs to be on the inside or the outside. So I completely understand that what you're talking about is what is the budget for the envelope, but you immediately have to kind of keep coming back to what's the use going to be. And so as you're putting the RFP together, I think you're going to want to raise the range of options so that your consultant team can appropriately develop a proposal for you, and that would translate into budgets.
I would say, Sarah, you agree with me or not, that it's more of a feasibility study versus a cost estimating exercise.
Yeah.
So you go through and find out if we do this, certain things will be needed to happen. If we're going to have mixed use, what kind of fire separations do we need between uses? If it's going to be residential, you know, and one family use, you don't have to do anything, you know, then it's just the restoration of the building. But as soon as you, if you're looking at maximizing opportunities for attracting investors to take on this project, having a range of options for what could be done in there seems like it may be more valuable of an exercise than saying, you know, this is what it's going to cost you to restore it to some level that may or may not be in parallel with those ultimate uses.
Okay, we can certainly include that in the RFP.
We also just routinely recommend as part of the RFP process, you know, pre-bid meetings and you know, where every potential prospective bidder attends, and that would also, I would think, introduce questions or conversation about, you know, why certain envisioned uses are going to necessitate different types of information in the report.
But I think it's more of the formulation of the RFP that needs a careful wording. So it's very clear what the ultimate goal is. It's not getting a number of saying, okay, you know, it's going to cost this. I mean, it could be that if there are things like the foundation needs stabilization or the roof needs stabilization, you know, as soon as you get into, are you going to restore the towers that aren't existent anymore? You know, those kind of things. Who knows what the developer or interested party is going to undertake, so that those numbers aren't necessarily valuable in that sense, but having more of a focus on what you can do with this project and say, hey, you know, we can market this to somebody that is interested in doing a B&B, or if it's a restaurant use or an office use, whatever comes out of the analysis, then you have more marketing power behind you rather than scaring people away with too big of a price tag because you've already calculated that it's going to exceed anything that they can do.
Yeah, in reality, it'll probably be more limited to residential because there's not the property itself isn't that huge as far as parking. As far as like a restaurant, it probably wouldn't really accommodate a restaurant too well. Maybe a small office or something, but mostly residential probably.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to the roll call vote. Vincenzo?
Aye.
And Beth Burgess?
Aye.
I will abstain. Marguerite Carnell?
Aye.
Tom Elmore?
Aye.
Leah Glazer?
Aye.
Sarah Nelson?
Aye.
And Deanna Rhodes is excused. Motion passes. We wish you well.
All right, thank you.
Thank you all.
Jonathan, do you want to ask Deanna to rejoin?
Yes, just text her, Paul.
Thank you.
Sure.
As soon as she's back, we'll move to the next item. Is she back yet?
Don't see her yet. There you go. All set.
Okay, thank you. Item 5B7, the Historic Preservation Council votes to award a Historic Restoration Fund grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Applicant is the New Britain Museum of American Art, address 56 Lexington Street, New Britain, Connecticut. The project is a Historic Restoration Fund, includes the removal and replacement of the main Landers House roof, bay roofs, and restoration of the associated above roofline components, including masonry chimneys. The work will include the removal and replacement of the tile roof systems, upper low-sloped roof area, bay roofs, roof-to-wall flashing and associated drainage components, repairs to the stucco dormers and masonry chimneys, and repairs and painting of the wood trim work at the dormer, windows, and roof perimeters, including the soffits, cornices, and trim work. The amount requested is $200,000. Can I have a motion to approve?
Is this Sarah so moved?
And a second?
Via second.
Thank you. Discussion?
This is Erin. Thank you. So you've seen this project before. It is phase 2 of work on the Landers House at the New Britain Museum of Art. The project will continue to be managed by the project group and Downs Construction because they were competitively bid already. They have overseen the design, specs, and bid documents that were included in the folder for council, and they are on the call to answer any questions you might have. Staff recommends this project for funding.
Erin, and I'll just ask one quick question before opening it up to everyone else. The drawings that were in the folder are the design development drawings, but the bid document said it was going to be released this week and a walkthrough on Thursday. Were the bid document release dates just placeholders? You guys would assume that if it's going to bid, there should be construction documents.
I will kick that over to Anthony, who developed those.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Thank you. Anthony DeMarle with Downs Construction. The drawings that we received are 100% construction documents. The bid documents that Erin probably shared with you are the draft. So those dates were plug numbers until the bid documents were approved by the team.
So there is a full set of construction documents at this point.
Yes, full set of construction drawings and specifications.
Okay. Tom Elmore. You're muted, Tom.
So based on what I just heard, are we reviewing this application on the 100% DDs that we've seen and reviewed over the last week? Or are we approving this application on 100% CDs that we haven't seen yet?
So the documents that I provided are there's full draw. I believe. Oh, okay, so I have 100% design development. So Anthony, are you saying that those are the ones that you are following still? Because the other ones I put in there are specifications.
Our bid documents are based on the 100% construction documents that were provided.
Okay.
So I don't know, maybe if you just put them wrong. So there was 100% construction documents provided dated May 31st of 23. From the projects. That's what our bidding documents are based on. Now, when I say bidding documents, it's the Downs, bid package that will go out to the potential subcontractors for pricing. So our bid documents are inclusive of the 100% CDs.
Okay. The documents that I put in there are the design development drawings from March 20th, 2023. So we don't have the May version in there.
Aaron, I don't mean to be a pain in the butt, but I'm going to have a hard time voting yay on this because we haven't seen the 100% CD drawings.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Hurd.
My name is Robert Hurd. I'm the architect of record for this project, and it's my understanding that grant applications require only design development drawings. The grant application was made based on the design development drawings. The owner, in light of the lead times for particularly tile materials, opted to produce the 100% CDs so that we'd be ready to go as soon as this application is approved. So and we'd be happy to share the CDs, but there wasn't a requirement of the grant application.
That is true. So we have typically only required design development drawings in recent meetings. We've asked for more information, so some applicants have provided them. But these were very far along. They were from March 2023, so I can't imagine that they've really changed that much, and they are very detailed. So, in the
Aaron is correct. There were refinements, but not any significant or substantive changes to the documents.
And so we did typically only require design development drawings, and that was because SHPO does work with the applicant after the application is approved to make sure that the bidding requirements are followed. We work with the CHRO office and the bidding, the whole team there to make sure that everything is at 100% before they go out to bid.
Okay, thank you for that update.
I will say that the design, I did look at the 100% design development. It was actually pretty substantially detailed. So the only question I had was the 200,000. Now that's just going toward the roof, correct? And the masonry work, is that right? Okay. Yeah, but I will. No, go ahead.
It is a very large project, so this is just sort of a piece of the full funding puzzle.
So what I would say is that if the funding is going toward the roof, the design development was pretty extensive. But I do understand what you're saying also, Thomas, regarding the 100% construction documents, but the design development is extremely detailed.
Tom, you still have your hand up. Is that another question or? Okay, I just have one other question. In the capital budget, it seemed like there were two sets of contingencies, one in the construction contingency and design estimating contingency, and then there's another group under the owner contingencies for the same levels. So I was just wondering if we're exceeding what's normally carried. It doesn't affect our grant amount, but it seemed like we were putting in contingencies on top of contingencies.
Paul,
Yeah,
this
so
is,
I did, oh, go ahead, Taylor.
hey, thanks, Aaron. Paul, this is Taylor Hansen with the projects group.
Yep.
We are helping the New Britain Museum manage this project. And I believe, according to the first phase, there is a requirement of a 15% contingency. So I believe Downs is carrying around 10%. We, just as a safeguard for our owner, we always include at least 10%, especially on a historic structure like this. You know, there's a lot of unknowns. So we typically advise our owners to carry an excessive amount of contingency just so that when we get into the project, they're adequately funded and we don't run into any hiccups. But yes, we've maintained the minimum 15% per the HRF grant guidelines.
Okay. V, you have another question?
No, I had another question, but I think it was answered through the conversation. I'm fine.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we can move to the roll call vote. V?
Aye.
Beth Burgess?
Aye.
I'll abstain. Marguerite Carnell?
Aye.
Tom Elmore?
Aye.
Leah Glazer?
Aye.
Sarah Nelson?
Aye.
And Deanna Rhodes?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Good luck with your project.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to VB8. Historic Preservation Council votes to award a Historic Restoration Fund grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Applicant Chabad House of Connecticut, Inc., doing business as Chabad Chevra, LLC, address 100 Bloomfield Avenue, Hartford, Connecticut. The project is Historic Restoration Fund removal, restoration, and replacement of 29 wooden and leaded glass windows. Amount requested is $38,473.50. Discussion? Oh, can I have a motion to approve? Sorry.
This is Sarah. I'll make a motion.
And a second?
Marguerite.
Now discussion.
Thank you. So this project was referred to the HRF program after our environmental review team made a site visit to view the scope of work provided as part of a FEMA nonprofit security grant. The grant provides funding support for target hardening and other physical security enhancements and nonprofits that are at high risk of terrorist attack. So the risk assessment was provided to the council. The windows will be restored and some will be rebuilt, and FEMA funds will provide the match and allow the addition of protective shatterproof film. This application has been reviewed by FEMA, and they have told me that it's on a strict schedule for the release of funds.
Any questions from council members? Sarah Nelson?
Thank you, Paul. So Aaron, I see the security report. You know, obviously this is a very important study, very important project. So I see the security report, which sort of in a general way talks about the windows. And then I see a budget from the company that used to be Byglass, but nowhere sort of between the two do I see the sort of specifications of actually how these windows are being altered. Is there something that I missed in the application, another document somewhere?
So on page, I think it's page 3 of the quote from sorry if I'm not looking at you. I just am pulling up the application. I did ask for more information about how the window assembly was going to work because Byglass does, they sort of glue on the muttons to the glass. So it's a little unusual for us. So I do believe if we go to the application, of course it's making me download it, and go to the company that was formerly Byglass, they did put some additional information there. But I don't have the specs for the shatterproof glass. So I am willing to follow up with that information if it would be helpful. I'm sure FEMA has it, so I could get it fairly easily and send it out to the group if it's helpful.
So what I'm thinking about is if you had original steel windows, which I gather some of these were steel windows, the frame is of a certain size, and often when you're talking about some sort of laminated glass or process, that there's a description about how the window sash is going to be altered. And I'm asking this actually on the owner's behalf so that they have an understanding about what it is that they're getting. Again, it's a worthy project.
So it looked like on the quotation that they were
Right.
saying the majority of the windows were leaded glass and they're maintaining the existing glass and they're weather stripping the windows. And it's only the two two replacement windows that would be insulated glass units. So if they were putting the film on, it would be putting film on the existing glass and rebuilding the leaded glass itself, not doing a full light with the glue-on Munton kind of replication.
Right, which is what Byglass used to do, is
Right.
cut the mutton in half and then laminate it on either side of it.
But put
Glass.
in a full insulated panel, but they're only going to do that on the windows that don't currently exist. But the majority of the windows would just have. I don't see I don't see the film itself, but there are high security films that can be applied to the glass rather than a full laminated panel that would affect the overall thickness of the unit and affecting the frame.
So the only thing that I would say is maybe that there would be a mock-up that could be done as part of their construction process so that there's an agreement before all of them are done all at the same time.
That's a great idea. I think when we prepare the bid documents, we will make sure that all of that information is identified and called out. And of course, I'll include all the information about the film that's being added.
Thank you. Tom.
Aaron, I had a question on, does the new glass conform to the blast-resistant window glass that they make reference to in the security risk assessment? Is that what they're going to be using, or was that just a standard piece of the security assessment that to show an option, but that's not what they're doing?
I noticed that too. I think it's to show an option, like you said, and they are going to be using a film.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Your hand's still raised, Tom. Any further questions? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move to roll call vote. V?
Aye.
Thank you. Beth Burgess?
Aye.
I'll abstain. Marguerite Carnell?
Aye.
Tom Elmore?
Aye.
Leah Glazer?
Aye.
Sarah Nelson?
Aye.
And Deanna Rhodes?
Aye.
The motion carries. Thank you very much, and we wish everyone well.
Everyone.
Okay, I'll turn over for the next item to Jonathan. For the
Next will be Todd Levine with Threatened Properties.
Thank you.
Hi, folks. Todd Levine here. You may have read today the bad news that Deborah Chapel is going to be demolished. We went through the process, as you may recall, of presenting to you prudent and feasible alternatives to demolition for the Deborah Chapel in 2022. You guys voted to refer the matter to the attention of the Attorney General. The Attorney General then picked it up and filed an injunction. While preparing for court, which would have been next month, there was a issue that we noted. We brought it back to the OAG, and they requested a formal National Park Service review on whether or not the Deborah Chapel and the cemetery in which it resides in is a part of the Frog Hollow Historic District. And it looks like in 1984, there was a mistake made in making the boundaries of the district. It was not caught and perpetrated up until now, but the National Park Service made a determination that it was not a part of the Frog Hollow National Register District and is not on the National Register. Therefore, CEPA, the Connecticut Environmental Protection Act, does not apply. So the Attorney General's office has withdrawn their injunction. They removed the injunction last month, and the Congregational Beth Israel, who are the owners of the cemetery and the church, has moved forward with the demolition, which apparently is taking place today. The OAG has requested the motion that you guys have in front of you to formally withdraw the referral. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from council members? Sarah Nelson? You're muted.
Sorry about that. Todd, I'm listening to everything that you're talking about, and I'm sure that the office is as frustrated as any of us to get to this point. I want to ask you how, from a sort of process standpoint, has this issue with the National Park Service boundaries impacted the process that you go through when you're vetting these applications too? Is there, I'm sure you're probably thinking, never again. What does this mean realistically?
Yeah, in terms of our process, I mean, we've always had a process of double checking to make sure sites are within the district. With this new revelation of a mistake that happened, 35 years ago, we will be triple checking to make sure something is listed. And if there's any ambiguity, we will reach out to National Park Service before bringing it to you guys. So, this is something that happened at the staff level of SHPO in 1984 and was never caught until now. So it's embarrassing. The OAG is not happy about it. But we will work together with them moving forward to do a better job.
And is there any follow-up from the other side in terms of legal fees that they've incurred, or?
Not that we're aware of. I was on a call just a couple days ago with OAG, and they did not mention that and if they did not mention that there was anything coming back to us in terms of a counter suit or something. When we talked about it initially last month, they were not concerned particularly because they were everything was done in a good faith effort. So I don't think the state had any concerns about that, but who knows? I don't know if there will be any other repercussions from CBI in the future.
Tom?
Yeah, Todd, thanks for that. Building off what Sarah was just asking, if there is a lawsuit coming, is council protected?
All you guys did was refer the matter based on the information that you had. So I would imagine, yes, if anybody would be under, and again, when I talked to OAG, the Attorney General's office, they did not have any concerns. And we did bring up staff and council, and they did not have any concerns. I haven't pushed it. When they said, don't worry about it, I said, okay. So,
well, the
I would
reason
imagine
why
we're safe.
I mean, my concern is, I was chair at that point and I was leading that meeting.
Sure.
So,
Do you want me to?
Todd, can I just interrupt for a second? Just to let you know, one of the things that I'm looking into right now, and I have our legislative liaison working with the State Department of Insurance, is actually to get a clear update so we can share it with all our DECD councils about those questions that you're asking. I think that the Department of Insurance has been a little bit slow to respond, and I did do a little bit of a follow-up at the end of last week. So we're looking into getting a really clear answer for that, and not only for you, but for any council.
Yeah.
So we will let you know as soon as we have that. It's already in the works. So Todd, I think you're okay, unless you want to follow up with the AG's office, but.
Thanks, Liz.
Thanks, Liz.
Any further questions? Leah?
I just wanted to obviously, echo what probably everybody's thinking. This is pretty heart-wrenching and incredibly frustrating. And it provides, an opportunity to, obviously make sure that we continue to encourage, our communities to inventory and list things. This building obviously captures a history that we haven't told yet in the state. So it makes me, very anxious now to list a chapel through my congregation, which is, of the same time period in terms of the development of congregations, except this one's a little bit later, but with the hope that maybe a listing of it. And that's the one I'm aware of, but it would be good to do a survey or an inventory and make sure there's not other chapels associated with other congregations, so that we don't completely lose all of that. I don't know if it's the same similar stories that are going to be associated with all these chapels, but it seems like we should somehow survey the state for these kinds of properties that are going to be missed.
Yeah, I'll just say that we have talked internally since this has come up about potentially updating older nominations. The older ones are woefully outdated. They don't include a lot of things, including women and minorities, that history. So we have discussed updating these older nominations so that they can be up to date, so that if this comes up again, particularly for this, we can address it. And I think Jenny just hopped on. I just saw her face. So maybe Jenny, you want to elaborate?
Sure. Updating nominations, particularly for Hartford and for the 1970s, is something we've been looking at for more than 5 years. Some of those projects you have to keep in mind are massive undertakings, and we have to make sure we have the capacity to both process those and have some local support. I have in particular been looking at Hartford and also the whole Asylum Hill MRA, and working with the State Review Board on ideas for updating. On the State Review Board side, we are actually working with circuit riders to assess all 1,682 listings ever and prioritize those for updates. But just keep in mind that you're talking about 20 years worth of National Register updates to do. But there are other places in those 1970 documents where there's quite a bit of ambiguity, especially since parcels have been merged and addresses changed. So all of that is stuff that we've been looking at and will be taking action on as we have capacity to do so.
Thank you. Marguerite, I see your hand is up.
Yes, I'm as heartbroken as anybody else about this news today that the building is coming down. And I'm following up on a request that I made at an earlier meeting as to whether or not we've got enough documentation together that we could put together a state level documentation for this important building.
Yes, we do have enough information. We have plenty of pictures. We've had circuit riders and SHPO staff out there numerous times taking pictures and documenting it. We do not have measurements. We don't have high level stuff, but we do have a lot of history. It's having someone put that all together for state level documentation that is not quite in place. And I don't know if that will be in place. There'll be a request to hire either a consultant to do it in-house or ask Preservation Connecticut to do it.
Thank you.
Leah?
Todd, can I just have a question from Todd on that? Todd, if the building's already on the ground, because I was under the impression it was starting at 7 o'clock this morning, do you do the state register in absentia?
Can you add it to the state register after it's gone? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
That would be a question for Marina. Marina, she's on the phone.
Tom, I think
I don't
I'm
know.
sorry, this is Jonathan. Tom, I think he was Paul was talking about I'm sorry, Marguerite was talking about state level documentation, which is sort of a light Habs hair recordation, not a state register nomination.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, and in terms of the state level documentations, we have been adding some of those to Concris. So if we did that for the chapel, you would be able to pull up that state level documentation and data point with information that the building had been demolished and then get that information there. But we don't list properties that are gone.
I misunderstood what Marguerite had said.
Leah?
I think Nancy's before me.
Nancy? Nancy 7?
Nancy, unmute.
Nancy, you're muted. Would you like to say something?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so I just want you to know that I am literally sick to my stomach today with the fate of the Deborah Chapel and the craven hand of the Temple Beth Israel congregation. I'm lashing myself because in 1991, with Jack Shanahan and Mary Donahue, I initiated a survey of all historic Connecticut synagogues. And there were some that were already listed on the National Register, but because of that survey, I think there were additional 13 or 15 that were added. Had I, and David Ransom, I mean, I did not even know about the Deborah Chapel. Had I known, it should have been included. That's the first thing. The second thing is that in the very last days, to no avail and uselessly, I had spoken with Catherine Labadia about what they call a feasibility study to determine what were some realistic, actual readaptive uses for this building, which many people had made many suggestions, including myself, but many people had ideas. Todd had located a developer, and it all sort of, circulated without any outcome. Because it wasn't listed on the register, perhaps it wasn't eligible. So my question to the council is that in situations such as this, is there any way that a private feasibility study should have been suggested and implemented a long time ago? Because obviously all of the, I think it was 50 pages of testimony by eminent cultural, architectural, and Jewish historians, and even the National Register, having put it on the most endangered list, did not convince the temple that they could do anything else but demolish it. So that's my question. You can't maybe have a grant to do it, but is there any way that you can, in future situations that might be similar, somehow engender these kinds of studies so that people could have a concrete vision to respond to it? I mean, it might not have made a difference, might have made a difference, who knows? That's it.
Yeah, I'll just say that, we did, reach out to the congregation and say, hey, if you guys want to apply for a grant, you're welcome to it. But I get your point, Nancy, is being more proactive with maybe just SHPO going forward with doing exactly that. Is just, paying ourselves to hire a consultant to do a charrette for this site. That would be an internal discussion if we have that ability to do so.
Thank you. Okay.
Leah?
So I guess what I was getting at was less about, asking SHPO to completely, I understand that it's a job to make sure that all the National Register districts are complete, but just in terms of this particular history that's being lost with this, with this resource. We think it was the oldest one in Connecticut. My question is just maybe to use as a starting place the survey that Nancy was talking about to make sure that all of the chapels associated with the synagogues are indeed listed if they are of a certain time frame, or just to see it, assess their eligibility, so that we don't lose another one of these chapels if indeed, if they're not, we might not know of others that might be in the state. That's so it's specific to this particular history.
Thank you. Any further questions? So Todd, do you want to read the motion, or shall I?
If you don't mind.
Okay.
Please.
The Historic Preservation Council votes to rescind its motion of December 7th, 2022, requesting the assistance of the Office of the Attorney General to prevent the unreasonable destruction of the historic property known as Deborah Chapel, located within Beth Israel Cemetery at 151 Ward Street, Hartford, Connecticut, pursuant to the provisions of Section 22A-19A of the Connecticut General Statutes. On July 20th, 2023, the United States Department of the Interior's National Park Service, in response to a SHPO request to confirm that Deborah Chapel within the Beth Israel Cemetery is a contributing resource to the Frog Hollow National Register of Historic Places district, stated the following, quote, "The Frog Hollow district was listed in the National Register on April 11th, 1979. A close examination of the original nomination, specifically the verbal boundary description and the USGS map with UTM coordinates, documents that the Frog Hollow Historic District does not include any portion of the Beth Israel Cemetery. Consequently, the Deborah Chapel in that cemetery is not part of the Frog Hollow Historic District and is not listed in the National Register of Historic Places." Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved, Beth Burgess.
And a second? Anyone?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Sarah. And your roll call vote. V?
Yes, aye.
Thank you.
Oh,
Beth
can we
Bird?
have a discussion before we do a roll call vote?
I believe so.
Well, I would like to ask why we're doing this, because I did not see it on the agenda. And this was only brought to my attention via an email this morning about 8:25. So I was not aware that this was on the agenda. I don't see it on the agenda. And I'm concerned that we're not following our own protocols.
Yeah.
I'm fairly certain it's on the agenda.
The discussion,
on-
I think, the discussion is listed as A for the
9A?
Deborah Chapel. Yeah, but the motion, I guess, was not specifically mentioned in the, at least the earlier agenda.
It looks like it's under number 9, threatened properties. It's listed 9A.
I don't see the motion. I see a discussion, but I don't see the motion.
So, Tom, the agenda will list the topic, but it doesn't necessarily say if there's a motion attached to it. I think your concern rightfully is that the motion was not in our council's material until this week. And so there may be other council members coming to the meeting unaware that there is a motion that they're voting on. Is that correct?
That's, yeah, I mean, honestly, before 8:20 or 8:25 this morning, I did not know this motion existed. I went through OneDrive last Friday and Saturday, and I completed my effort for today's meeting.
So Paul, what you might want to do is double check that the council had the opportunity to review the motion, was aware of it, had the opportunity to review it.
I'm not sure when it was posted. I also saw it this morning, following up, but it is possible to bring up other motions within a discussion. So I'm not sure if that negates the fact that it wasn't presented earlier. And since it is a formality to close out something that can't happen, the OAG has requested, that this, closure of the issue, just so it's not hanging out there, because it's not eligible. Does that make sense, Tom?
No, honestly, I'd like to make a motion to withdraw this until next month's meeting so that it's on the agenda and we can all review it in a timely manner.
Do we need a second for that motion to postpone it until the next meeting? Sarah, would that be the typical procedure?
Yes, you would need a second to Tom's motion.
And Paul, fair enough.
Yes.
If there's no second, then my motion doesn't have any standing. And then you can proceed with the initial motion.
Do we have a second from anyone to postpone voting on this disposition motion?
Is there a sense of urgency that we need to vote on that now? If so, we can discuss, but if not, I think I agree with Tom if he needs time to review it as well. If there's a sense of urgency, then I think we can discuss as a team.
Jonathan or Todd, would you like to?
The urgency is that we just like to get it wrapped up for the OAG and just move on from it. The motion was put in the OneDrive, I'm sorry, one Monday evening after we had our discussion, Paul, and I apologize that it was not there last week. There is nothing to review other than the motion, which was distributed to council earlier today ahead of the meeting as just a way to make sure people were aware of it. So I will leave it to council to decide how to move forward, but our SHPO's desire would be to move forward with the vote and just put the matter behind us.
Tom, what are your thoughts?
I've made my thoughts pretty plain. I mean, I don't mean to be a hard ass, but to find out this morning that there's a new motion, I was dumbfounded.
So do we have a second and then do a roll call on deferring? If not, we will proceed with the original motion as written.
Does anybody else share Tom's view?
Any comments? No. So I think we can continue the discussion, Tom, but probably it's not going to change the nature of the motion, given that it's no longer eligible. So hearing no official second, we'll proceed with the vote on the motion as submitted. V?
Aye.
Beth Burgess?
Aye.
I will abstain. Marguerite Carnell?
Aye.
Tom?
I will abstain.
Leah Glazer?
Aye.
Sarah Nelson?
Aye.
And Deanna?
I'm going to abstain because I wasn't on the board at the time.
Thank you. The motion carries. Hopefully we won't have another situation that will involve this type of process. Next on the agenda is the report from the State Historic Preservation Officer, Jonathan.
Morning, everybody. Make sure I'm not muted. I'm not. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for attending today. I just wanted to officially welcome Deanna Rhodes to the HPC and attending her first meeting today. Welcome, Deanna. The second thing I wanted to talk about very quickly was our GIS analyst position, which is associated with our new Concrest system, which I've been talking about for some time now. Hiring for the analyst position, who's going to be in charge of and manage the Concrest system moving forward, is going really well. We had a total of 79 people apply for the position, which was a great number, and staff and I have met and narrowed down that pool to a small group of finalists, and we are very much looking forward to meeting with them and interviewing them during the first week of September. So we will obviously keep you guys posted on how that process is moving forward, but we are very excited to almost have this new person on staff to take over the management of this program and be able to fully roll it out and share it with our constituents and our partners. The third item I had to address with everyone was exciting news. Actually, it's the newest National Historic Landmark in Connecticut has been designated, has been approved, and I believe just needs a signature from the Secretary of the Interior. I'm sure some of you have heard the news, but the Barnum Museum in Bridgeport has been approved as Connecticut's newest and 65th National Historic Landmark, which is the highest level of federal recognition for a historic property. There are only approximately 2,600 NHLs in the United States today, and each represents an outstanding aspect of American history and culture. So congratulations to former council member Kathy Marr, who many of you know, the executive director of the Barnum. There's a big event being planned for tomorrow, and they're going to celebrate the designation, which I'm sure some of you have seen in the press. And I wanted to especially thank the members of staff who have been working on this, particularly Jenny Schofield, our National Register Coordinator, who I know who has been working on this for a very long time, trying to move this nomination forward. And I wanted to give Jenny the opportunity to say anything if she wanted to.
Just that with Kathy, we are celebrating about a 13-year effort to get the National Historic Landmark status, and the last step is just the Secretary of Interior signature. There was a pause in the appointment of the National Park Service Advisory Board, so there have not been any new NHLs since 2021. So we are very excited and happy to celebrate also the city of Bridgeport's first NHL.
Very exciting. Thank you, Jenny. And then the last thing I wanted to talk to you guys about was I wanted to offer a general thank you to council for the work you've done this year so far. You have a very well-deserved month off coming up in September. We do not have a meeting scheduled for September, but we will return now to our regularly scheduled calendar in October. That's October 4th will be the next meeting. And our goal is to have that be a hybrid meeting. So we might get to see you in person for the next meeting. So that's very exciting. Looking forward to it. And we will keep you posted as we move forward with the planning for that and provide you with logistics and everything you'll need if you want to come into the office to meet in person. But that is all I have. Thank you all very much. And I'm going to turn it over to Liz.
Hi, Paul. Hi, Paul and everybody. Paul, do you want to call on me officially?
Next report from
I
Liz.
love to be official, you know. I'm excited to say that the museums have been having a great season with visitation back to pre-pandemic levels. And actually, we're seeing that across the state. Museums have been really mobbed this summer, which is kind of exciting. We have, for the most part, been fully staffed, which has resulted in the ability for staff to actually breathe, permanent staff to breathe. Some of them have even had a summer vacation, which is really for the first time in 2 years. Just a couple things that we're working on together. I've never been at a site that has a historic firearms use policy, but in fact, that is something that has been discussed across the country. And so we are going to be working with our colleagues from Minuteman State Park to create a firearms use policy for the museums. We're also working on choosing a payment system that we can use outside and off-site, which you would think would be easy and should have been done years ago, but you would be wrong because this kind of thing is never easy with the state. We're also having our first meeting with the new director over at the Connecticut Museum of History and Industry over at the State Library in the Judicial Building in a couple of weeks. So that's really exciting. Things that are specifically happening around, this is great news. I should start with the less great news, but the great news is that if you have yet to hear, and I think I might have sent this around, is that we're so pleased to announce that Old Newgate Prison and Coppermine was awarded a $750,000 semi-quincentennial grant for the rehabilitation of Veets Tavern. And as a result of that, we were contacted by Senator Blumenthal's office and held a press event on site, joined by Congressman Larson and a whole bunch of other dignitaries. And this is really exciting because we did some really major stabilization work. That the Veets Tavern was essentially bowing out the front facade that was on the door. And that was quite a big job to get that under control. So that was the first step, but this has been on the radar. The fact that the building is there, it's wonderful, and it needs attention because it really can't be used in the way it is right now. And the thought process behind this is not to open this as a tavern museum, but actually to be staying true to the purpose that taverns played historically and using the building as a center for discussion about contemporary topics, maybe, and linking, of course, to our conversations about incarceration. And I'm not saying that there's not going to be a small exhibit about the history of the building and historic taverns, but we'll work with our colleagues and to make that happen. So it's really exciting, and that represents the third of three, I want to say 3 large federal grants that we've received for the museums, almost $2 million, but maybe a little over $2 million in funding. And that's really exciting because that's unprecedented. So On the less great side, we're still discussing structural plans for stabilizing the 4-story cell block, which is part of the Save America's Treasure grant that we received. This has been an ongoing discussion, but on Friday, we have all the senior team members at the table, including the the specialist in historic masonry issues. And it is unlikely that we'll be able to move ahead in the way that we had originally planned, which is sort of a beautifully stabilized cell block, but we will have to take a look at what the costs are, the preservation needs of the building, and perhaps most importantly, human safety issues. So I hope to have some more information for you when we meet again in October. But other than that, the programs at the museum have been going really well. Record turnouts for the GEM show and last weekend's historic reenactment. And we are getting a lot of love in other ways too. Staff from Connecticut Humanities came to visit the site to discuss planning for the 250th, joined by some state senators, John Kissel and Lisa Seminara. So we have been in the legislative eye, which is really exciting. Over at the Eric Sloan Museum, they have hosted another successful Touch of Trade event on painting and drywall last weekend. These are events that have young and slightly older teens coming in to learn about historic building crafts for the most part. And we have a fairly, they've been great. The young people have loved them. And interestingly, I've been bringing these to the attention of our someone in our office who is on the board of the tech high schools, as well as the governor's workforce programming, and they're really interested in how some of these programs can lay foundations for older students to actually make career decisions. So lots going on over at the Sloan Museum through October 21st. Over at the Henry Whitfield Museum, the summer archaeology students from Southern Connecticut State University have wrapped up another successful season. This year's team, staff has reported that this year's team were crazy excited about doing the work. We have a couple of events coming up. Welcome Fest, which was the first time we did that was last year, which is on Saturday, September 9th. And that's really a festival to open the doors to across the country, actually, to people who have come to this country in the recent past to ensure them that there is a place for them here in Connecticut's historical spaces. We also hosted a new event called the Nature Stewards Field Day. And the really exciting piece of this is that we finally, through this event, we have begun to start on what we hope to be a very deep and long-lasting relationship with the Mohegan Tribal Nation, who were the original stewards of the property, the town that we now know as Guilford. So that's exciting. And then at the Prudence Crandall Museum, really the big, we've good visitation, even though we haven't really officially done a big reopening. But we are working on our press event and symposium, which is scheduled for November 4th. I'll have an update for you next time we meet, because by then all the plans should be finalized. But we do have academics who are doing active research on women's history of the time period, Prudence Crandall specifically, Native American and African American history, who are all going to be presenting and having a great panel discussion at that Saturday symposium. And then finally, I have mentioned the Summer at the Museums program, which I think is a really interesting program. As you know, it's been run out of the Office of the Arts and Connecticut Humanities Partnership. And this year we had over 120 participants. The Lieutenant Governor has been on the road. I've been on the road with her quite a bit at different Connecticut museums, which is terrific. I think maybe she is the Museum and Arts Lieutenant Governor, which is wonderful. But just as an interesting thing, so the Summer at the Museums program it lives on CT Visit. And between when the program started on June 28th to August 21st, page views on that landing page were 352,926, so almost 353,000 page views. And the outbound links, because folks are supposed to click to the participants, were literally just under 2 million. And I think that's astounding. And it's definitely, I know Beth is shaking her head, like that is astounding. So we're really excited to delve more deeply into the stats for the program over now 3 years. and what that says about history, preservation, and the presentation of our history to our audiences, both from Connecticut, in state, and out of the state. So exciting stuff. And that's all I have for you today.
Thank you, Liz. Moving right along, is there any new business to bring up? There was nothing on the list. No. Our liaison with public and private agencies?
Jane couldn't make it today, Paul, so she's
Okay.
not here.
Any public comments? No. Then I think the next item is the adjournment. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Paul.
Okay, Marguerite. And a second?
I second. David.
Thank you. All right, all in favor, say aye or bye.
Aye.
Aye.
Who was that
Thanks,
second?
everyone.
Was that V?
Who was the second? to adjourn?
Sarah Nelson was the second.
Sarah?
Yep.
Or V?
Sarah.
Sarah.
Sarah, okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
See
Thank
all in
you.
in
Have a
October.
good next in September. Bye.
Have a good day.
Bye.
October.